Of all the cities in the world, Jerusalem has the most troubled past and the most difficult future. To the Jews, it is the site of the great temples of Herod and Solomon. To Muslims, the place where Muhammad ascended to heaven. To Christians, the place where their Messiah was crucified. After his death, the word of Jesus Christ took root. Christianity became the new religion of the Roman Empire, which had ruled Jerusalem for nearly 400 years. But in the 7th century, the holy city was seized in the name of a new faith, Islam. Now, 400 years later, the Christians wanted Jerusalem back. Across Europe, some 60,000 warriors were gathering, readying themselves for battle. Amongst them was the experienced soldier Godfrey, Duke of Bouillon. He would lead his own army on what would become a 3-year crusade across 3,000 miles to reclaim Jerusalem in the name of God. Godfrey was more than just a hardened warrior. A generous benefactor of the church, he was also an immensely pious man.
As far as I'm concerned, there's one key thing that's driving people to take up the cross, and that is that they actually believe that this crusade is a spiritual war and that it's going to purify their souls of sin. And yes, I'm sure they've got other agendas, they've got other things they're looking for at the same time, but if there's one thing that's at the core and that it's across the largest range of people, it's spirituality, it's religion that's driving this.
The Christian Catholic faith dominated 11th century Western Europe.
The world of the Middle Ages was a world that was deeply concerned with matters of religion. And it's almost impossible for us in a secular age today to overestimate how concerned they were. It's almost impossible for us to understand how concerned they were.
People are bombarded with the fact that they are threatened by sin from all forms of life. Just about everything they can do in life is potentially sinful. It's literally as if the air they're breathing is contaminated with a sin.
The church could absolve a man of his sins, but it lacked the political power to wash away the ills of an entire society. Feuds with the secular rulers of Europe had pushed the papacy to the sidelines until 1088, when a new pope took office in Rome, Urban II.
Pope Urban was an astute individual, a man who understood the political and social and religious currents and needs of his time, someone who knew how to bring those things together and channel them into productive outlets.
Pope Urban needed a master plan to put the Catholic Church back on the political map. The answer to his prayers would come in the form of a desperate plea from the East, a plea for help from an old rival. In 1095, a desperate call for help was dispatched to the head of the Catholic Church, Pope Urban II. Sent from the imperial court of Constantinople, it came from his Eastern Christian rival, the political master of the Greek Orthodox Church, the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I. The power of the Byzantine Empire was slipping. It had once controlled Jerusalem and the Holy Land of the Middle East, but Islam was now the dominant force in the region. The Seljuk Turks were recent converts to Islam. They had emerged from the steppes of Central Asia and swept down into the Middle East in search of land. Fearsome warriors, their armies numbered tens of thousands. They seized control of the Muslim territories of Persia, Syria, and Palestine, and finally captured the holy city of Jerusalem. Then they turn their gaze north and storm their way to the doorstep of the great Byzantine capital, Constantinople.
The status quo, the existing power politics, the power balance of the region was changed. The Byzantines had lost a great area of taxation, of recruitment for troops. They'd lost a lot of prestige as well.
By 1095, the Emperor Alexius was desperate to strike back, but he couldn't do it alone. He appealed to the Pope, in the spirit of Christian brotherhood, to send an elite force of knights to help him keep the Turks at bay. It presented Pope Urban with a perfect opportunity to enhance his political power. In November 1095, the Pope gave a spellbinding open-air sermon outside the town of Clermont in France. It was a rallying call to princes, knights, clerics, and the common man to wage a war under the banner of the Catholic Church. In the autumn of 1096, almost a year after the Pope's sermon, armies from France, Germany, and Italy set out on an epic 3,000-mile march to aid their Christian brothers and liberate the Holy Land from Muslim rule. At the helm of the largest army from northern Europe was Godfrey, Duke of Bouillon.
Godfrey was one of the senior leaders of the First Crusade. He was a very pious man. In fact, we know that he brought a number of monks with him on the expedition to help him in his daily prayers. He was also a great warrior. He'd won repute before the Crusade for his feats in single combat, and he was a respected man who the leaders of the expedition felt they could all deal with.